Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how you doing?
No time for chit-chat. We have to get right to it before we both forget the absolute fire hose of information. Wow, we just started recording and the
perfect timing.
Wednesday sirens go off. We are nothing if not on brand.
This is amazing, and we didn't even try to do this. But Tom, before we do, because we just talked to the linebackers and the tight ends, and we've got a whole bunch of information that is not written down, and we're trying to hopefully get it out to you. And as I said before the show, just vomit it out to you. But first, Tom, I wanted to talk to you about the 6 Pairs of Gold Pants Club.
Yes, I was talking to Justin Hilliard.
There you go. That's what I wanted.
Wait a minute.
Yes, that's what I wanted to bring up just real quick and mention that if you listened to the last show, we talked about C.J. Saunders possibly being the only member of that club, and we racked our brains trying to think back in history, like who else could have possibly been. We should have looked towards the present.
So some might say the future, but
true.
Yeah, he hasn't won them yet.
But in terms of the present team, so that's the show.
That's it.
But so we talked to linebackers and Al Washington. We'll just be quiet for the siren for a while. But no, did we talk to all 7 upperclassmen?
I believe so. We talked to Kayvon Pope.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Everybody, all 7 upperclassmen and Al Washington. Al Washington talked for about 20 minutes. This is an awesome siren.
Al Washington was fantastic. We don't get to talk to Al Washington very often, and Al Washington was talking and was there for about 15 minutes. And our good buddy Mike Bassford from the Sports Information Department was kind of saying, okay, so 2 more questions, 1 more question, okay, and then someone asked another question, and then he said 1 more question, and then someone asked 1 more question, and then Al Washington was like, no, that's cool, I got it, I got time. So Al Washington, officially friend of the podcast.
and there's a bunch of answers, and Kevin Wilson and the tight ends also spoke. I guess let's start with Master Teague, since we haven't been able to talk about that yet. Master Teague goes down Monday practice, and so this was the first time we get to talk to the coaches and the players. And there's not a lot of talk going on, but Kevin Wilson did say that he expects Teague to be back in time for the season, maybe in time for camp. But again, it's early in regards to the injury. They're not talking about the injury. Who even knows if there is an injury?
I have a suspicion that there may be an injury.
Okay. All right. That's your opinion. So right now they are without him. And like I said, Kevin Wilson expects him back. Well, another interesting thing is Kevin Wilson said, but now you can't overwork the guys who remain. So you still have to be careful with those guys, because now you're down to Steel Chambers and Demariel McCall will move over, but you can't just overload those guys. You'll continue to work in Xavier Johnson, the walk-on, Robert Cope, the walk-on, and just make sure nobody gets overworked and injured. It's kind of like, Tom, when you sprain an ankle or hurt your knee and then you overcompensate on the other side.
I just did that. I hurt my back, and then as a result of walking funny because I hurt my back, I hurt my hip, and it was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah, so that's what
the backbone really is connected to the hip bone. How about that?
Yeah. I believe all songs. Everything, I believe, as long as it's sung, it's gospel. Especially gospel music.
Yes.
Anything else to add on the whole Master Teague, Ohio State losing their starting running back?
Yeah, I mean, that seems kind of significant. And I think at this point it's sort of hopeful that he'll be back, but it's way too soon to say. Like, what are they going to say at this point? The answer is, I don't know. So what they're going to say is, we hope so, we think so, but they don't. I don't think that they know, and
especially 2 days after the injury.
Exactly. Like you haven't necessarily had time to, if it was a surgical thing, like you haven't had time to let the swelling go down in time to, have the surgery, to see how the surgery goes, to see how the recovery goes. Like it's way too early. This is a position that they really couldn't afford to have an injury. And if he's back in time for the season, there's no guarantee he's 100%. I mean, there's a lot of question marks right now. They have guys. Marcus Crowley should be back in time for the season. Steel Chambers has looked good in the bits we've seen him. Demariel McCall has been a good running back in the limited amount of action that he's had. So they have options. They're not, this is not quite as desperate as it might appear when you say hey, they have one healthy scholarship running back for the spring. Xavier Johnson is the other one where I've come away a little impressed with him from what we've seen, and he's someone who had like an Iowa State offer. Mm-hmm. He walked on at Ohio State. This was not just
Cincinnati.
This is not someone who walked on at Ohio State and just had no other choices. Mm-hmm. Like, well, I guess I'll do this. He's someone who just sort of keep an eye on him. He's wearing number 25 this spring. Keep an eye on him. He's someone who could be an impact player if they need to lean on him a little bit this fall as well.
Kevin Wilson even was talking about Mitch Rossi, the walk-on fullback tight end, since there's no fullback, he's a tight end, and wanting even to get him involved in the offense last year because of some of the things he can do. So while we're all talking like there's nobody left, mm-hmm. The reality is they have players they like, and I'm not saying Mitch Rossi is the solution to the problem.
Doak Walker Award watch list. I'm just saying, think about
it. But there are still options. And I wrote about that this morning at theozone.net where, there have been worse situations. Tom, do you remember the 2003 running back situation at Ohio State?
I saw you post about it, so yes.
Lydell Ross, Mo Hall, and Ira Guilford had to move over from safety.
I was convinced, way back in the day, that Ira Guilford was going to be the next big thing. I liked Ira Guilford a lot. Seemed like a very nice kid when we got to interview him. And didn't play a whole lot, and then I think got in trouble, and then was gone. And
I was a Sergio Welch guy at safety.
Yeah.
I thought, because, the whole Mike Doss craze was going on, and got to find the next Mike Doss, but that's another time.
That's enough Sergio Welch talk.
So Kevin Wilson had a bunch to say, as he always does, including the move of Cade Stover to tight end and Cormontae Hamilton to defensive line. And Kevin Wilson gave some really interesting backstory on why that happened. And Larry Johnson wanted to do that last year, but Hamilton was a little banged up, and Kevin Wilson, and plus he's away from home. So Kevin Wilson was like, I don't want him to move positions right now and feel unwanted. Basically like we didn't want him at tight end. So let's keep him at tight end for now, and then we'll revisit this, just because they didn't want him to go and feel like, he's all homesick. I'm already moving positions. I have no future here. And meanwhile, Larry Johnson is the guy that wants him. Not that Kevin Wilson didn't, but he also said, like, Hamilton is dieting and still weighing 263, 268. And so there was no way they were going to be able to keep him basically at tight end. So, he moved, and as Ryan Day said on Monday, he was very open to it. And so I just thought it was interesting, like, how some of these position moves take place or don't, or when they do or don't. And this time it was, last year he just, let's not do it right now because it might affect him negatively in terms of mood. And Ryan Day talks about just mental health aspect of things and keeping guys on an even keel. And that was an example of that at play, basically.
Yeah. That's one of those things that you don't necessarily think about. And it's not like you, the great unwashed masses listening. It's like, we don't necessarily think about that stuff. And he was someone who came from Tennessee. So it was, a little bit of a hike and a culture change. And, you would assume that a lot of his friends were probably in that tight end room, and those are the people he knows well. So you don't want to completely throw him into a whole different group of people who, other side of the ball, he probably doesn't know anyone in that room particularly well. And, add into the fact he was hurt. We talked to Justin Hilliard today about that and the difficulty in just the mental portion of dealing with an injury. And, all of that stuff together, that's really, really, really impressive that they're thinking about that kind of stuff, that it's not just like, okay, well, we're going to move you over here and start that process. Because, it's very easy. That's when you get someone who transfers after a year. That's something where that's a pretty good illustration that they really are thinking about kind of the whole person. You hear them talking about developing the whole person and thinking about the whole person. That's a pretty good illustration of that.
And so that is what led them to saying, well, if the defensive line gets Hamilton, then we need Cade Stover. But there was also, Cade Stover wasn't necessarily, I guess, as comfortable at defensive end as he is, offense, he says it's good to have the football back in his hands. He feels good doing it. Kevin Wilson thinks he's going to be a really good tight end. This is a guy who rushed for 1,477 yards his senior season in high school, winning Mr. Football in Ohio. So he is comfortable with the football in his hands. This isn't something where he's fighting the football and he's just a tight end size, so they put him out there. Mm-hmm. And he's comfortable doing this, as we saw on Monday.
Yeah.
I don't recall him dropping anything, and I saw him catch at least 3 or 4 passes. And, this is talking to him today. He seemed perfectly happy, and, we'll see. And Ohio State played 4 tight ends last year. Quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he is one of the 4 this year. Jake Hosman is back, Luke Farrell is back, and Jeremy Ruckert. So we could see them playing 4 again this year if need be. I don't know if we will see as much 4 tight ends, Tom, because of some of the stuff Kevin Wilson was saying about the inside receivers.
Yes. Yeah. We did not, we don't generally get to spend a lot of time, like one of us is with one person, one of us is with the other. So I was with Al Washington the whole time. You were with Kevin Wilson, and we're walking out afterwards, and you're like, so here's what Kevin Wilson said.
Yeah, when somebody asked Kevin Wilson, like, how do you weigh moving Garrett Wilson from outside to inside? And he's like, with a scale. and then he's like, basically, there's not that you can do more, but Brian Hartline thought they would be able to do more with Garrett Wilson on the inside. And then Kevin Wilson talked about his Ryan Broyles, who was in the slot for his Oklahoma Sooners back in 2010 when he caught 131 passes.
Is that a lot? I don't know.
It is a lot. I'd probably be like 4th all-time career at Ohio State, something like that. But then he talked about how it's a matchup thing, and he's like, yeah, sure, that guy sometimes has to be able to block a linebacker or a safety, but those guys also have to defend him. And so you get matchups going. And he said, we would throw it to Ryan Broyles all the time, and he would try to score all the time, and he was really good. So we just continued to go at him. And Tom, I don't know if you watched last season. Garrett Wilson is really good. And now you match him up.
Is that what you took away from that?
And now you match him up with worse pass defenders. Mm-hmm. I think he might be even better. And so a couple days ago, I posted on the forum an over-under of 63.5 catches.
Over.
Let me finish, Tom. You might not. You might go under. We'll see. 63.5 catches for Garrett Wilson this year, which was the average of KJ Hill the past 2 seasons. So, Tom, let me ask you, over under Garrett Wilson, 63.5 catches this year.
Let me think about it. What was the number again? 63.5? I guess I'll go over.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have gone over anyway, but then to hear, when a coach says, 131 passes that Ryan Broyles caught, and this, that's what we could do here. Not saying that exactly, but
that's more than twice as many as 63.5.
Exactly. So you might want to go over that. He also said that Jackson Smith-Njigba looks dynamic right now.
Same.
Mookie Cooper looking smooth, and he's, for me, I don't want to say he's the forgotten guy, but he's the guy that I would expect to be behind those guys. But the coaches continue to talk him up, like, he's been out of football a year, but don't be shocked if he does something. But these slot guys, Tom, I think we talked about it on Monday. It bears more consideration when you have one of your offensive coordinators dropping in, how they're just going to kill everybody in the slot now.
Well, and he's not someone who will necessarily just comp every running back to Adrian Peterson and every quarterback to, like, it's like, there are certain coaches, not necessarily in the Ohio State staff, but there are coaches, Michigan's long time running back coach under like Lloyd Carr was like notorious for like every running back reminded him of like
Fred Jackson,
yeah, reminded him of some past Heisman winner, and it was like, yeah, this guy has 13 career carries and is going to transfer to some FCS school, and he reminds you a little bit, just a little bit, of Adrian Peterson. Kevin Wilson is not one of those guys. Like, he's not someone where you just kind of, you hear something and you're like, yeah, okay. So, yeah, that's a mixture of what we've seen out of Garrett Wilson, the idea of him in the slot, and what Wilson has, Kevin Wilson has seen of him. I mean, that's like, yeah, okay, that's, I'm officially intrigued. And the interesting thing is the impact that can have. I mean, this was your transition, but it's worth kind of underlining this a little bit. The impact that'll have on the tight ends. Because if you go, they were in 12 personnel a lot last year, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, because they had only 1 H they were real comfortable with. So if you've got 2 H's you're comfortable with this year in Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba, or CJ Saunders, or Mookie Cooper,
or Jalen Gill,
I mean, then that's probably going to put you in a lot more 1 tight end formations this year.
Yeah, they certainly have more options than they did last year, and you get Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day when they have options, and defenses are going to be put in bad situations. He also talked a little bit about just all of the freshman receivers, G. Scott and Julian Fleming as well, how dynamic they are, and just a real good group. And he said this is the best offseason Jalen Harris has ever had, which had to happen.
Yeah.
And I asked him if that was a reason why you moved Garrett Wilson from X to H. And he said, no, it's just Brian Hartline thought that Garrett Wilson could really do some damage inside. And it's like, well, yeah.
Same.
When you consider, if you just go look at Ohio State stats, and over the last, since Urban Meyer arrived, look where they throw the ball. They throw the ball in the slot. Mm-hmm. So now by moving Garrett Wilson to the slot, you have doubled his output, basically, because you've doubled his targets. Mm-hmm. And, Austin Mack and Benjamin Victor outside will catch 25, 30 passes. And that's what their career was, splitting time. KJ Hill and Paris Campbell splitting reps, like the other 2018 I mentioned, they had 162 catches together. So there's the targeting there, it's more of it, because of the matchups, because you can get the matchups you want. And we just watched the combine this weekend, and I don't think there's any linebackers that are going to be able to stay with a Garrett Wilson or a Jackson Smith and Jigba, even though every linebacker in high school and college runs a 4-4-1.
Yeah. Yeah. All of them.
These are matchups that are not favorable for a defense. And we talked on Monday, it's still kind of contingent on X's stepping up, but maybe it's not.
Yeah, I mean, they'll figure it out. Like they have the number of receivers that they need.
Yeah,
like well above the minimum number of receivers they need to have a good season this year. And if some of the X's step up, great. Jalen Harris. This has to be the best spring of Jalen Harris's career because the previous springs have not gotten him on the field much. So, that's what you want. You want to have him on the field. They want to be able to lean on him. He gives them something that like a Garrett Wilson doesn't necessarily give them, just in terms of that size. So that's a big piece, and they'll want to make sure that if he earns his way on the field, he's going to have an opportunity to play. But they have enough different pieces there that they can kind of mix and match a little bit, and it can still be pretty darn exciting. Just with the people we've talked about, Chris Olave, he would be. He seems like he may play some kind of role this fall as well.
And don't forget about him. But even when you've got Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, guys like that, it forces a defense to go with 3 corners then, and then once they go to a nickel, that allows you to run the ball better. So there's this whole mix and match play at work where as the defense gets smaller, you can now run the ball better, and now those guys aren't having to block linebackers and safeties. Now they're blocking guys their own size, but that doesn't give the defense more of an advantage. They're still going to be difficult to defend the pass. Like Garrett Wilson is still going to be difficult to cover. Jackson Smith will be difficult to cover.
Yeah, I mean, that's we talked. One of the things I talked to Al Washington about today was kind of the other side of that, and why the bullet was created. And our buddy Pat Murphy asked about so did we overblow that last year? And he goes, no, that ended up being okay Like they didn't really need to use it because Pete Werner was able to do so much other stuff. But, he said the idea behind the bullet is basically you want someone who's like a Court Williams, for example, who is as fast as a safety, but also, big enough to play and run support pretty well. And because of the matchups on those slot guys, if you put a linebacker on the slot guy, like a linebacker on Garrett Wilson, like, nope, that's just not going to work. So, that's the defensive coach's side of this same conversation.
Yeah. Anything else from the offense before we just jump over to the defense?
Not a ton. I mean, I think Cade Stover is kind of in the learning process. Did you talk to him? I talked to people.
Yeah, talk to him, and he's having a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that should be a good move for him. I don't know how much they need him this year, if they're going to be running a lot more 3 wide receiver stuff, right. Which that's great because they have 3 other tight ends who are perfectly capable, perfectly capable upperclassmen who are going to probably take most of those snaps.
So like I said, we talked to 7 linebackers. The big news I think out of this is that Baron Browning is no longer at middle linebacker with Tuf Borland. And I know people have been clamoring for that. We wanted to know if that was going to be the case. When we walked onto the practice field to get ready for interviews, we saw Baron Browning walking off with Zach Harrison and Tyler Friday to work on some pass rush moves. And so then we get to talk to Baron Browning, and we're like, he was asked, are you moving to defensive end? And he's like, well, I'm going to be rushing the passer more. I asked him, was this a way for you to get away from Tuf Borland, that you guys aren't on top of each other at middle linebacker? And he said, no, I've been moved outside for a while now. And I say, when you say outside, do you mean Sam? And he's like, no, Sam and Will, I'm doing whatever. And wherever he ends up, we'll see. But at this point, it doesn't look like it will be middle linebacker. And it looks like now this will be an opportunity for Tuf Borland, Baron Browning to be on the field at the same time, which we thought would kind of make some sense, assuming Baron Browning can handle that. But Pete Werner has also been moving around from the Sam to, I would assume he's inside. We saw him on Monday.
Yeah, we saw him with the mic on Monday.
Doing the mic and the Will, which now Baron Browning perhaps at the Sam, who's this, athletic freak we all know about. And Tom, sounds like first game, it's going to be Tuf Borland in the middle, Pete Werner at the Will, and Baron Browning at the Sam. Is that true or false?
I will say false, because we've also seen Justin Hilliard at the Sam this spring. And I feel like maybe we should define these positions just in case people aren't super up to speed with the finer points of the Ohio State linebacker responsibilities. The Will is the weak side linebacker, so that's like last year that was Malik Harrison. You can think of that as the Darren Lee position. There's maybe a little more blitzing out of that spot. The Mike is the middle backer, so that was Tuf Borland. That's been Tuf Borland the last few years. The classic Mike backer at Ohio State is Andy Katzenmoyer. Like this, that's the run stuffer guy right up the middle. And then the Sam is the strong side, which he goes with the tight end. That's Pete Werner last year, where they were sort of mixing him in with the idea was that was going to be coming off the field with the bullet. And then Pete Werner kind of showed he could just do it all. So then they didn't pull him off the field for the bullet.
And the Mike and Will are interchangeable. They're basically the 2 inside linebackers in this defense. But, you still consider it, I guess, an outside when you're talking to Baron Browning at least. So you've got this versatile group where everybody can play multiple positions. Taraja Mitchell right now is only playing the Will. Kayvon Pope, I saw him working with the Sams, with Justin Hilliard, like meeting with them after practice. So it looks like that's where he is right now. But all of these guys, and Dallas Gant is in the middle now, where he was last season as well. But all of these guys can play multiple positions. So you've got 7 upperclassmen who you can't get them all on the field. And when I was asking the guys, like the players, like, how do you get this many people on the field? And then they're like, it's up to the coaches. What are you going to do? We can all play multiple positions, which makes it even more difficult. It's like you've turned 7 linebackers into 12.
Yeah.
Because most of them can play multiple positions.
Well, and Al Washington said he doesn't want to get into a situation where it's like, okay, we have 4 Wills and 6 Sams, and like they want guys to be able to kind of be a little bit cross-trained, especially with the Will and the Mike spots, because they view those as basically interchangeable, which is why it was so interesting that all we know about Baron Browning is he's not going to play the Mike. It's like he's playing the Will, which is interchangeable with the Mike, but he's not playing the Mike. He's just playing the Will and the Sam. So that really does sound like it's get him away from Tuf Borland and kind of make sure you can get both of those guys on the field a lot together.
And before anybody says anything bad about Tuf Borland,
oh yeah,
what does Al Washington say about Tuf Borland?
Yeah, Al Washington called Tuf Borland a coach on the field. Like, I mean, if I don't want to put words in Al Washington's mouth, but if you are one of the people who does not like Pete Werner or Tuf Borland, Al Washington may want to fight you. He, both of those guys, I could not speak highly enough of those guys.
But he's just a coach.
Yeah. I mean,
what the hell does he know?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's in meetings and practices and watching film and professionally trained in this area. So, if you want to,
does he have a podcast?
I don't know. Maybe. He listens to ours. I don't know if I don't listen to his.
Well, once you listen to this one, you're like, I can't do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, come on. We make this look hard. Yeah. He was very, 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 spoke very, very highly of both of those guys. And, just the leadership they provide, but, what they do on the field. And he said about 4 or 5 times, like, Tuf Borland had a really good year last year, a very solid year last year. Like, someone asked him about, the criticism that Borland will come in for. He's like, I don't know what they're watching. Like, I don't know what they're looking at to criticize his performance last year. So, and with the younger guys, that was a very big topic. The 3 juniors. So Kayvon Pope, Taraja Mitchell, Dallas Gant. Those are 3 juniors who all came in with like 4-star linebacker credentials as recruits. And, how do you keep all these guys happy? And he said it's a combination of culture in that room. And, that you're just trying to get better. You're just trying to get better. You're just trying to get better every day. And also he said, it's not like they played 3 linebackers last year. You go through the snap counts and it's like, he said he didn't think Tuf Borland played more than 40 snaps in any game last year. Like you're rotating, and it's not even just garbage time rotation. Like you've got guys going in there and playing meaningful minutes in the first halves of games. So, it's kind of all of that. Taraja Mitchell was asked, did he think maybe about taking a redshirt year to kind of get a year of separation from the older guys? And he said no, he didn't want to do that. It was not something he was planning on doing. But it sounds like they have all 7 guys there who they plan on having contribute this year. And, that is not a bad problem. That is, that's, and that's one of the oldest, dumbest cliches. So excuse me for using it, but they having 7 linebackers who you're comfortable with, who are versatile, who can play in a bunch of different spots, who probably have different stuff that they're good at and can be used in certain situations. That's not a bad thing.
Well, and we know when Jeff Hafley brought this defense and they worked on it, he would always talk about plugging and playing. You can plug players in any position and they can play it because they know what they're supposed to be doing, what each role is supposed to be doing. But when you talk about the culture that Al Washington mentioned, every time I asked one of these guys, like, how do you play? How do you play 7? And they would say, like, the most important thing is just making the room better. It's all about the room. And you're asking individual guys, how do you get on the field? And they're talking about, you got to make the room better. So that's what you say. I mean, that's what you say before spring. After spring, when the transfer portal calls, maybe that's something different. But right now, the more you make the room better, the more you showcase yourself as well. So that's something that they're all, looking to do. But even as, we don't like to talk transfers here, but with Justin Hilliard, who mentioned last year, or at the end of last year, saying he got his 6th year, there's still going to have to be some talks. Ryan Day said they'd have to talk about what's going on. Every time we've seen, like, the ones out there, Justin Hilliard every time. The one day we've seen
yes,
we've
yes,
seen
100% of the days.
Justin Hilliard has been out there, but I think some of that was 4-4. But also Baron Browning is out right now. But Justin Hilliard is a Sam, but Baron Browning is a Sam,
right? Yeah.
So,
and I don't get the sense that this is not us not knowing it. I think they're just kind of figuring this out. They are just kind of seeing where the pieces fit.
Yeah, and when Pete Werner was asking why did you end up where you are now, and he said, the coach told me to go there. And so I went there. And it's different keys and things like that. But this is a guy, like, every year, seemingly he has had to move from Will to Sam. Sometimes in the spring he'll move and then go back out. And so, that's another guy, as you said, Al Washington it's the whole Urban Meyer, I want to name my son John Simon Meyer, whatever. Mm-hmm. He loves Pete Werner. Pete Werner does whatever he's asked. Does it well. You can trust him. And when it comes to coaches and their players, if they can trust that player, that's about as much as you can hope for. That's what you strive for, is to be able to trust those players, that they'll do what you ask them. Not everybody's perfect. You're not going to make every tackle, but they're where they're supposed to be. They know what they're doing. And as a great military mind once said, knowing is half the battle.
Mm. Who was that? Was that Patton?
G.I. Joe.
Mm. Joe Patton?
G.I. Joe Patton.
Talking about trust, that was something that Al Washington brought up. He said, these guys have to be able to play, but we have to be able to trust them. That was something he talked about today. I don't know if you were there when he was talking about that, but yeah, that's that's the thing that I think people will look at and go, well, I think this guy is faster than this other guy. And it's like, okay, do the coaches trust him to be in the right spot? Because you can be fast and run yourself out of the play. Taraja Mitchell is someone who the coaches in the past have said, like, he gets there, like he does it. He'll go the wrong way, but he's so fast he can get back into the spot.
And what did they call him? What did Al Washington call him?
Well, he said, first of all, he said he had contact courage. He said Court Williams and Taraja Mitchell are the two people who he used the phrase contact courage, which just means he likes to hit people a lot.
The red badge of contact courage.
Yes. And he said that he calls Taraja Mitchell Bobby Boucher from The Waterboy, because I don't think that made our list of classic comedy films that we did last week for the Patreon subscribers. But yeah, he is someone who likes to hit, and I don't think that's a huge surprise if you watched any Ohio State football. But this is he also. I was talking to him, and I have not stood next to him for a while. Like, he's big. Like, his arms are big. Like, he is a big dude. And Al Washington said he has made a point to get in great shape this spring.
Well, and Mitchell was also a kid who got heavy as a high school senior, and I think had to drop weight as he got to Ohio State and got rebuilt. But when you talk about trust, and I'll go back to a story I've told many times, the coaches clinic, when Al Washington was talking about Taraja Mitchell as maybe a true free. It was last spring, so it would have been his looking at freshman tape and maybe spring as a sophomore, saying, like, he might take the wrong hole, but he'll get there. He might take the first step is wrong, but he'll get there. That's fine, but that doesn't equate to trust.
Right.
And you kind of saw that last year, and Mitchell, I think he had some injuries last year, but this guy comes in as a high school All-American. Could he start from day one at middle linebacker? No, because you can't trust him.
Yeah.
And now I think all 7 of these guys, if they're here, they're going to find a way to play him. And it's that rotation, and Baron Browning is a situational pass rusher, allows him to get on the field, some more. And, Pete Werner can do everything. You don't even have to take him out on passing downs per se, but if you want, then you can bring in Browning as a pass rusher, and then somebody behind him, or maybe Pete Werner then goes from wheel to bullet. Mm-hmm. But there's some moving parts, but these guys are Kayvon Pope. We saw he made plays in the passing game last year. I think everybody wants to see more Taraja Mitchell. And then you got Dallas Gant as the forgotten guy who is now like the backup middle linebacker.
Yeah. I mean, he's someone who, like, they were talking to him up 2 years ago as a guy who was impressive and still hasn't quite done, gotten on the field as a starter. But, the fact that you have not gotten on the field as a starter is not necessarily a reflection of the fact that you couldn't be a starter. It's just, hey, we can't start 7 linebackers.
Yeah, welcome to Ohio State. They have linebackers here.
One of the things you reminded me with Pete Werner, we were talking about how flexible he has been. And I think Werner might have said this, but someone asked Al Washington about it. And the idea that Werner played basically everywhere other than 6-tech last year. Like he was all over the field. And Al Washington said, if we put him at 6 technique, he would get blown up for the first play, but I would trust him to sort of figure it out. Like, just like he would make it work there. Mm-hmm. Just whatever they ask him to do, he'll do it. It won't be like, actually, I don't really want to go be the deep safety out by myself. Like, he does it and he goes and figures it out.
Well, and just imagine being that guy. He said he was 240 pounds last year, and now I'm going to be the deep safety for this play, which the quarterback probably sees me back here now. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot to ask, and the trust involved in allowing that guy to do that. I know, kind of a whipping boy for the fans based on not being able to cover that well, the year before when
he was asked to do stuff that he had no business being.
We need you out wide on J.D. Spielman. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think this is going to go well, but I'm going to go.
He's not going to say no, but also that's not on him.
Right. And so this, then last year he's asked to do some similar stuff and does well. And I just, he's one of those guys like Damon Arnett last year. You would hope the fans finally get off somebody's back, and they did for him, for Arnett, who had a really good year. And I think you're going to see that. If Pete Werner is no longer like moving around and is the will, you're going to see him like, all over the ball, like Malik Harrison last year.
Well, yeah, he'll end up with crazy stats there, because that's a little bit more of a stat position where, you had Darren Lee coming off the edge, and how many sacks did Darren Lee have as a junior? 8, 10? I mean, a pretty good number. So, maybe that's one of the issues is if you're in that other spot, if you're in that will spot, you're not the one who's in the picture with the wide receiver 20 yards down the field. So then people don't blame you. And then, hey, you're coming off the edge, and so you're getting a bunch of TFLs and a bunch of sacks, and it's all of a sudden like, oh, hey, he's good all of a sudden. It's like, no, he's just in a different role, and some positions are a little more statistically friendly than others.
Yeah. Anything else from the linebackers today, Tom, that you want to put out there?
I think we've gone through most of it.
I think we did a pretty good job of regurgitating everything that we talked about today, that we listened to and heard about.
Yeah, I think we got it.
And now players are going on spring break.
Yeah, I think they have one more practice on Friday,
okay,
and then they go on spring break, and then they come back. So we will have no practice access next week. So we'll probably have one show next week. And then we will likely be back to 2 shows.
But the good news is we'll be doing the show from Panama City Beach.
Spring break.
Celebrating spring break with college kids.
We'll do it first thing in the morning at 3 p.m.
We'll be doing it from, I'm trying to think, it's like some of the bars that, the clubs that used to be there, but, I don't know if they are still there.
I'm going to guess not.
That's just hurtful. I think that'll do it then. If we've got nothing else, I mean, that's succinct, information packed, news. Mm-hmm. What more could you want from the show?
To get to watch practice.
Yeah, that's all right. Ohio high school football coaches got to watch it. Why shouldn't they? Mm-hmm. They're more special than we are. We know that.
Mm-hmm. Are they?
Ryan Day is trying to get spring football for Ohio. Mm-hmm. Trying to get the coaches 5 days. He's only given us 3 days of open practice.
Mm-hmm.
So what about 5 days for the media?
That sounds quite reasonable, if you ask me. Seems like a good compromise.
It's weird, though, that we're asking for more work.
We just want to be able to give more to the audience. That's all.
And on that note, we want to thank you all for listening. We'll say goodbye because I can't follow up that lie from Tom.
Bye.
All right, thank you all for listening. We will talk to you